Thank you for joining us today for checking initial placement in Encore 2. The materials you'll need for today include a handout and our placement packet. The handout includes a picture of the slides that I will be presenting from, and the placement packet is the resource you used to determine where to start students working in Read Naturally Encore. It also can be used for checking placement. It's important to understand that placement is actually two phases. You did conducting initial placement at the start of the school year. Probably after your formal assessments, you did initial placement to put your students into the correct level and give them the correct story goal for working in Encore 2. Initial placement is based solely on fluency, and it allows you to determine which level, series, and story goal to start your students in. Checking initial placement is a process that happens after students have completed a few stories, and it takes into account fluency, but also comprehension. When we're monitoring student performance, we have two phases. The first is the one we're talking about today, which is checking initial placement, ideally after 3 stories. And that second phase is keeping students challenged over time. And we will have a webinar on that in a month or so that will cover what to do once students have passed 6 or more stories. But for now, we're looking at the start of the school year after they've passed a few stories, gathering that data and information and seeing if they are in the right level and if they have the right story goal. What we do with the initial data from the first 3 stories is we take that data and average it, and we plug it into the initial level criteria and the initial goal criteria. And we're basically asking ourselves, if I had all this information on placement day, would I still have put the student in this level? Would I still have given the student this story goal? You have a lot more information after they've passed 3 stories. Struggling readers are very inconsistent. And so placement day for initial placement is just one day. But checking initial placement is how they've been performing in the program for a little while after passing 3 stories. And so that data is much more stable, and you can make a better decision once you have all that information. The place that you find this data is in the fluency, or I'm sorry, is on the fluency graph that the students fill in as they work through the program. You're going to be taking a look to make sure they're in the right level. And what you're doing is you're taking their average cold timing score from the first 3 stories, and you're plugging it in to the placement range table. Okay. So if your student is, for example, working in a level 1.0 to 3.0, which, by the way, that includes all of the phonics series as well. So if your student is in the phonics series, or they're in a sequence series 1.0 to 3.0, their cold scores should be between 30 and 60 in order for this to be the right level for them. That information you got on placement day as well, but it was just on one passage. Now we're taking an average from 3, so that's a more stable number. And we also now have comprehension data. So we're taking the student's average quiz score from the first 3 stories, and we're asking ourselves, are they understanding at least at 60%? If they are, I am going to leave them where they are. Okay, so if their fluency score is on the placement table range, then they are in the right level for fluency. The one exception is if their comprehension is below 60. 60% is a number that teachers don't like very much because educators want our students to understand at least at 80% or better, right? Of course we do. So the 60% isn't saying we're happy with them at that point or they're good enough at that point. But research shows us that if students understand at least at 60%, comprehension gains are possible. If a student is understanding at only 30, 40, 50%, it's so much harder than they can handle that they're not even really able to make gains. So that's where that 60% comes from. We're going to take a look at a couple sample stories, or I'm sorry, a couple sample students. But before I do that, I just want to pop out and show you a resource that is available in your placement packet. So on the website, we have a link to this placement packet, and it's going to be visible in your chat box as well. The placement packet is the document you use to determine which level, which story goal was correct for each student, right? This is the document that explains how to do placement. It's also the document that contains all the placement passages. Now, on the 67th page of this document, we have something called the Checking Initial Placement Instruction and Worksheet. This one page gives you all the information you need to determine whether or not the student's in the right level and whether or not they have the right story goal. Okay. We also have this document on our website as well. So there's a direct link to the document. So if you don't want to go into the PDF of the placement packet and you want to go directly to that document, that link is also in your chat box, so that you can see that that resource is available freestanding without needing to dig through that placement packet. Okay, so these are two resources for you to help you make the decisions about the students we're going to talk through today, but more importantly, help you make the decisions about your own students. So back in the PowerPoint, we're going to have a sample student named Anna, and Anna has passed 3 stories so far in level 5.6. And so we want to take a look at what our average cold timing score is, which after we look at the fluency graph, we took the cold timing score on the first story, the second story, and the third story, right? We added those 3 together and divided by 3 to get our average. And we're going to see, is she in the right level? And is her quiz at least at 60%? And Anna's quiz is at 78%. Okay, so let's take a look at the information on Anna and ask these questions one at a time. The first question is Anna's average cold timing score in the range for her placement? And then what's her quiz like? So looking now at my slide, you have all the information visible to you to make the decision about the first question. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the level that Anna's working in, level 5.6, and you're going to plug that into your placement table down here in the lower left corner. So level 5.6 is the second from the bottom row. Okay. Her average cold timing score is 90. So is her average cold timing score in the range for level 5.6? You bet it is. She's right in the middle. So if this was the information I got on placement day, I would have put her in this level. Because from a fluency standpoint, 5.6 is the right level for Anna to work on in Encore II. Okay, but I need to make sure her quiz is good enough. And Anna's quiz is listed here. It's at 78%. In order to get that data point, I looked at the student report. I took how many questions she got right out of the total number that she answered, and we got the average percentage correct. Okay, so the real question becomes, do we want to continue Anna in 5.6? Do we want to raise Anna to a higher level? Or do we want to lower Anna to a lower level? And Anna's words correct per minute score is right in the range for placement, indicating to me 5.6 is right. Her quiz is 78, so it's good enough that I don't need to worry about lowering it. So I am going to continue Anna in level 5.6. Because I want to continue her working in 5.6, then I need to take a look at her goal. Is her goal right? I know she's in the right level, but does she have the right story goal? So students' goals exceed the average cold timing score by about 30 for 4th grade and below and 40 for 5th grade and above. And the reason for that is older students tend to be able to make more significant gains in about the same amount of time. They have a little better audio memories, they talk a little faster, so it tends to be better for students to have the difference be about 40 if they're older. And Anna is in that older group as a 7th grader. We also want the student's goal to be equal to or just a little bit less than the average hot timing score. So what do I mean by that? average hot timing score. In order for a student to pass a story, she has to at least meet her story goal during her pass timing. So hot timing and pass timing, we use those words interchangeably. So when I say hot timing, I mean that pass timing, that final timing for the teacher has to be at least at or above her goal. When we say slightly, what do we mean? What is too much away? What is it, how close do we want it to be? We want it to be a single digit away. So if the difference is a double digit, it means it's too great of a difference. So 10 or more away from that goal indicates a change is needed. If it's 0 to 9, it means it's probably okay for now. Okay. The final thing we're looking at is how many times does she have to practice? Now, if you're somebody who prefers pictures when they're learning something instead of written words, here is all this information, but in a picture form, the form that you will see on your student's report. The cold timing score should be 30 or 40 less than the goal. I have the goal listed here as 120. The hot timing score should be close to the goal, slightly greater or equal to, but not by a lot. And if it is by a lot, that just indicates that a change is needed. Okay, so let's take a look at Anna's data. As a 7th grader with a goal of 120, her average cold timing score is 90, hot timing's 132, and she's practicing 6 times. So I'm going to ask these 3 questions one at a time, just like I did for the level. And all the information you need to answer these questions is going to be on my slide. So you can just look at that. The first question is, does Anna's goal exceed her average cold timing score by about 40? Okay, so on this bulleted list, her story goal is 120. Okay, the cold timing average is 90. Is that about a 40-word difference? It's only about a 30-word difference. And Anna's a 7th grader. I want it to be about a 40-word difference. 30 is 10 away from 40. So it indicates to me it's too great of a difference, right? So right now I'm thinking maybe Anna could handle a higher story goal. So I take a look at her average hot timing in comparison to her goal. Her average hot timing is 132. Her goal is still 120. That's a difference of 12. That's a double-digit difference. So again, I'm thinking her story goal might be too low. She is practicing between 3 and 10 times. She's practicing 6 times, which is a great number. So do you think we should continue Anna with a goal of 120? Should we raise Anna to to a higher goal, or should we lower her to a lower goal? In this situation, I would want to raise Anna to a higher goal. I would not raise her goal significantly so that she couldn't reach it. In fact, we usually raise by 10 at a time. So her new goal would be 130. She can still meet it, but she's going to still have to practice about the same number of times in order to do that, which is what I want, right? Whenever you're raising a level or a goal, you always want to be thinking about getting the student to have to work as hard as you can get them to work before they get frustrated. Giving them a goal that is difficult to reach, but they are able to reach it, right? We don't want them to get frustrated or we'll lose them. But if they don't work hard, they're not going to make the progress they need to catch up. So this is the balancing act that we're playing with the student's data when we're making these adjustments. So let's take a look at another student, Rob. Rob is a 4th grader. He's working in level 3.0. His average cold timing is 70, and he's doing very well on the quiz with 94. So ask yourself, is his average cold timing score in the range for placement? Let me give you the information you need to answer that question. In level 3.0 is where he's working. His cold timing score is 70. So take that information to the table in the lower right-hand corner. And you can see that at 3.0, the score should be between 30 and 60 for that to be the right level. But his goal is 70. So he's outside the range. If this was placement day, if he got 70 on the 3.0 passage in placement day, the placement packet would have suggested you try 3.5 because 3.0 would be too easy. He'd be outside that range. So right now I'm thinking that level might be too easy for him. His quiz is above 60%, or at least at 6. He's 60% or above. In fact, he's at 94%. So he's doing very well. And Rob then is somewhat of an easy answer, right? He's clearly outside the fluency range and he's excelling at the quiz. So I am going to raise Rob's level. Now, one nice thing about raising a student's level is that you then don't have to raise their goal. We tend to only raise one thing at a time. So if you decide to raise a student's level, then you're going to leave their story goal the same. And the opposite is true as well. If you decide to raise a story goal, you leave the level the same. So remember back with Anna, once we decided we were going to leave her level the same, I said we need to check goal, right? Because her level is going to stay the same. That means I have the opportunity to raise the goal. And I need to make sure that I'm challenging her enough in that area as well. Now with Rob, I decided to raise his level initially. And so then I didn't have to look at goal because I've already changed one of the criteria. So we will leave Rob. We will move Rob to level 3.5, but we will leave his story goal the same. Okay. And again, when we raise goals, we tend to raise by 10 words, like we did with Anna. When we raise levels, we tend to raise by half a grade level. So Rob was in 3.0. I would now move him into 3.5. Now, as soon as you have a rule, you know there's some exceptions. Occasionally there will be, but the vast majority of the time, you're just going to raise the goal by about 10 and you're going to raise the level by a half level. We have one final student to talk about today, and that is Lee. Here is Lee's report. I like this graphic on the PowerPoint because it helps you see, first of all, exactly when you're supposed to do this process, which is after 3 stories. You can see in Rob's fluency graph that he has passed 1, 2, 3 stories, right? And I'm sure I'm sorry, this is Lee. I'm sure Lee's report doesn't look quite this neat as it does in the computer image. But it is ideal if you're having Lee complete all these little boxes underneath each bar graph, because it gives you information that you need in order to make decisions about adjustments. So you can see Lee wrote his average cold timing score. And if you put your eyes just above that, there's 2 numbers in this cold timing section. He lists how many words he attempted, then how many errors, and he did the math. So in the first story, he attempted 45, he had 4 errors, so his average cold timing was 41. Okay. So that's where you're taking a look at the information to get that average cold timing score. You're taking those first 3 numbers and getting an average number. For the comprehension, you're taking a look at the comprehension report, which again is on the student's report. It's in the upper right-hand corner. And the students are to be recording how they did the first time they answered the question. Not when they went back and fixed it, because you made them go back and fix their incorrect answers. But when they went through the first time, that's what they should be recording on that comprehension section of their reports. So here we can see that he is getting 5 questions in each level. I'm sorry, in each story. He got 5 out of 5, then 4 out of 5, then 4 out of 5. So I would take his average and get his percent correct on the first 3 quizzes. That's where you're going to get the information in order to ask your first question on whether or not he has the level criteria right. So from that, we need average cold timing and we need average quiz. We're going to ask the 2 questions. All the information is present again for you. In fact, I'm also going to put it in what you would look at on the student's report. Okay, so on the other 2 students, I just had it listed in bulleted form, but now over on the right hand, you can see I have it listed on the actual report image that you would see from your own student. So take his placement level, take Lee's placement level of 2.5. Take his average cold timing score and plug it into that placement table that's in the lower right-hand corner. He's working in 2.5. His average cold score is 41. He's right within the range. Okay. On your student's report, that should have his level listed, and you will find his average cold timing score by adding and dividing these 3 numbers. Okay. Now, the next question is his quiz at least at 60%? Yeah, he's at 87%. He's doing really well on his quiz. So what would you want to do? Would you want to continue him in level 2.5? Would you want to raise him to a harder level, or would you want to lower him to a lower level? His words correct per minute score is right within the range. On 2.5, he's reading 41. So if 41 was what he got on placement day, the placement packet would have suggested you put him in level 2.5. Okay. So I am going to continue Lee in level 2.5. Now, occasionally I have some people say, but he's doing so well on the quiz. Don't you think he could handle something a little harder? That is oftentimes the question I get. And so what I want you to think about, if you were wondering that yourself, what I want you to think about is how difficult the reading is for Lee. He's only reading 41 words correct per minute. That is very slow. It means it's very hard. It means that he is nowhere near automatic with the words that are showing up in level 2.5 passages. He needs to grow a lot there from a fluency standpoint. So we want to build that automaticity at that lower level before we move him up. Okay, so that is what we're looking at initially. We're checking his fluency score to determine if he's in the right level. The quiz is just making sure he's doing well enough to stay there. Okay. All right, so we're going to leave him in 2.5, which means we're going to take a look at what his information is regarding his story goal. So we still need that average cold timing score that we looked at before. All right. We have the average comprehension. We have the story goal listed. And we also have the average number of practices. Well, we don't have the average number of practices. We have the number of practices for each story. And so we're going to take the average in order to answer how many practices he's averaging each story. Okay. So as a third grader, we're going to ask, we want his goal and his cold timing to be about 30 words apart because he's a fourth grader or below. As a third grader, he's under that, he's in that lower student group, lower age. And that is an important distinction. It is the age of the student, not the level in which they are working. So if Lee was a fifth grader working in 2.5, then it would be 40, right? Because he would be in a fifth grade and above. So it is the age of the child, not the level they're working at, that is the distinction between whether or not you want the difference to be 30 or if you want the difference to be 40. Okay. So we're going to ask these three questions. Again, we have all the information present. Okay. So is his goal and his cold timing score about 30 words apart? Well, his goal is 70. His average cold timing score is 41. So yeah, it's 29 apart. You're not going to get much closer than that. So that's great. That tells me his goal is probably right. After the first question, I still have two more, but after the first one, I'm thinking his goal is probably pretty good. The next thing I want to ask is about the difference between goal and hot timing. His goal is still 70. His average hot timing is 74, so it's a single digit difference. It's only 4 words away from where we want it. So again, that tells me the goal is right. He's practicing the correct number of times as well. He's practicing 6 times. So do we continually with the goal of 70? Do we raise him to a higher goal? Do we lower him to a lower goal? In this case, Lee was given the right level and the right goal on placement day. So we're just going to let him keep going. In fact, most of your students after 3 stories, most of them are probably in the right spot and will keep going, probably more than half of them. And then you'll have some who need a higher level and a couple who need a higher goal, but most of them will be like Lee, who after the first 3 stories, you realize, yep, placement day was right. We got the right level and story goal for him off the bat. Now we have a resource on our website that's called the Checking Initial Placement Calculator. And here I have a screenshot of it, but I'm going to pop out of the PowerPoint again, and I'm going to go into onto our website. And the link to this location on our website will be in your chat box as well. And you can see that this is Read Naturally's Checking Initial Placement Calculator. And if you enter all the information about the student, we'll take Anna, for example. She was a 7th grader working in level 5.6. Her goal at the start was 120. She completed 3 stories. Her average cold timing was 90. So we'll just put 90 in for each. so that we're sure to get average. She practiced 6 times on average, and her average hot timing score was 132. Now, each individual story is not going to be identical. But as you can see, you don't even have to do the averaging yourself. This calculator will do the averaging for you. So if you were to put in the 3 different cold timing scores, it would give you the average number here. Okay. And then it tells you how many percent correct on the quiz out of, oops, I'm sorry, it's out of 7. All right. So now we want to take a look at whether or not the student is going to have what the recommendation is. Notice that it's going to recommend that we continue the level, and it's going to recommend that we can raise the goal. So this calculator is a resource for you to utilize until you are comfortable making the decisions yourself. Okay, so you lean on this calculator for the first few students. And then what I suggest you do is after you have used the calculator to make the decision for the first few students, I suggest doing it on your own and use the calculator to check your work. Okay, so look at the students' data, make the decisions on your own, then go to the calculator and put in the information and see, did I get the same decision as the calculator did? After that, you probably won't ever need to come back to it. But it is there when you are first becoming familiar and confident with your own decision-making process in that. Okay. So thank you so much for your time today and for your attention to all of your students. If you have questions, please reach out to us at our phone number or at our email. We are here to help you. We hope you have an excellent afternoon. Take care.